The title Sayfullah, the Sword of Allah, was not just a name, it was destiny. At the Battle of Mu'tah, with only 3,000 Muslims against 100,000 Byzantines, Khalid ibn al-Waleed's genius saved the army from annihilation. With quick thinking, brilliant deception, and unshakable courage, he withdrew the believers with minimal losses. From that day forward, the Prophet Muhammad himself honored Khalid with a name that would echo through history, the Sword of Allah. No longer a warrior fighting for tribal pride, Khalid was now a man with a divine mission. And this mission would take him far beyond the deserts of Arabia. But destiny does not come without trial. Soon after the passing of the Prophet, Arabia was thrown into turmoil. Tribes who once declared loyalty turned their backs on Islam. Some refused to pay zakat, the charity that held the community together. Others followed false prophets who claimed new revelations. The unity of the Muslims was crumbling. Enemies of Islam, both near and far, watched with hope, believing the young Ummah would collapse before it had even begun to rise. For a moment, the flame of Islam seemed at risk of being extinguished forever. But in the heart of Medina stood a leader of unwavering resolve, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the first caliph of Islam. While others suggested patience, Abu Bakr declared with thunder in his voice, "By Allah, if they withhold even a rope they once gave in zakat, I will fight them for it." His words shocked some, inspired others, but left no doubt Islam would not retreat. Abu Bakr's faith was immovable, but faith alone needed a weapon. And there was only one man who could be that weapon. A man whose very name struck fear in enemies and inspired unshakable confidence among believers. Khalid ibn al-Waleed, the Sword of Allah. Khalid did not hesitate. With the banner of Islam in his hand and the trust of Abu Bakr on his shoulders, he rode at the head of the Muslim cavalry. Across deserts, valleys, and oases, he confronted tribe after tribe that abandoned their faith. To those who returned to Islam, Khalid offered forgiveness and safety. But to those who insisted on rebellion and falsehood, Khalid struck with the fury of battle. His armies moved with the speed of the desert winds, their discipline unmatched, their courage unshakable. One by one, the fires of rebellion were extinguished. And with every victory, Khalid reminded Arabia that Islam was not a passing storm. It was the rising sun, destined to shine forever. One of the fiercest rebels was Talaiha, a self-proclaimed prophet in Najd. He gathered thousands under his banner, boasting of divine visions. But when Khalid's forces arrived, Talaiha's lies were exposed. The battlefield shook with the clash of steel and cries of warriors. Khalid's cavalry struck with precision, scattering Talaiha's followers. The false prophet himself fled the battlefield in disgrace, abandoning his people to face the Sword of Allah. It was a victory that sent a clear message. Falsehood could never stand against truth, and deception would always crumble before the discipline of Islam. But the greatest challenge of the Ridda Wars came at Yamamah, against Musaylima the liar. His army numbered in the tens of thousands, and the battle that followed was one of the bloodiest in early Islamic history. At first, the Muslims faltered under the sheer ferocity of the enemy. But Khalid, never shaken, reorganized the ranks. He reminded the believers of their duty, called them to fight for the words of Allah, and then led a thunderous charge. Swords clashed, arrows darkened the sky, and the ground was soaked with blood. In the end, Musaylima fell, slain in battle, and with him died the greatest rebellion against Islam. Though the Muslims paid dearly with many martyrs, victory belonged to Khalid and the Ummah. When the dust of Yamamah settled, the cost of victory was clear. Hundreds of Muslims had been martyred, including many who had memorized the Quran. The loss grieved the Ummah deeply. Yet it was this tragedy that led to the preservation of the Quran in written form, ensuring that Allah's words would remain unaltered for all time. For Khalid, the battlefield was never just about conquest. It was about sacrifice, about holding the line so that the truth of Islam could endure. With Yamamah, Arabia was secured. The rebels were crushed, and once more, the tribes united under Islam. By now, Khalid ibn al-Waleed's reputation had spread like wildfire across the Arabian Peninsula. To the Muslims, his very presence was reassurance, a shield that no enemy could break. To his foes, his name was terror, a shadow that meant defeat was certain. He had faced overwhelming odds at Mu'tah, false prophets in Najd, and savage armies at Yamma. Each time, he emerged victorious. He was no longer just a commander. He was a legend, a man whose strategies were studied, whose courage was unmatched, and whose loyalty to Islam was absolute. The Prophet had once declared Khalid the sword of Allah, and now that sword was sharpened, tested, and unbreakable. Abu Bakr relied on him not just as a commander, but as the very weapon of the caliphate. Wherever Khalid rode, victory followed. And with Arabia united once more, a new horizon opened before the Muslims. For beyond the desert lay empires, mighty and ancient, with armies in the tens of thousands and territories stretching as far as the eye could see. The question was no longer whether Islam would survive, but whether it could rise to face the world. The Caliph Abu Bakr looked beyond Arabia. To the east lay the Persian Empire, proud and powerful. To the west, the Byzantine Empire, rich and disciplined. Both had once mocked the Muslims, considering them a small desert people unworthy of notice. But Abu Bakr saw a different future. He sent Khalid ibn al-Waleed to lead expeditions beyond Arabia, not for wealth or conquest, but to carry the banner of Islam to lands that had never heard its call. The Ridda Wars were over. A greater struggle was about to begin. And so, the sword of Allah marched again. His cavalry thundered across the sands, his banners rose against the sky, and his men followed with unshakable faith. To them, this was more than war. It was service to Allah, a mission to spread truth and justice where tyranny reigned. Khalid rode at the front, his eyes fixed on the horizon, ready to carve Islam's name into the pages of history. Arabia was no longer the battlefield. The world itself awaited. From Mu'tah to Yamama, from rebellion to unity, Khalid ibn al-Waleed proved that he was not just a commander, but the living sword of Allah. His strategies saved Islam in its most fragile moment. His courage held the Ummah together, and his victories paved the way for what was to come. But his greatest tests still lay ahead, against the mighty Persian and Byzantine empires. In our next episode of Whispers of History, witness how Khalid faced the world's superpowers, how the deserts of Arabia clashed with the legions of empires, and how the sword of Allah carved his name into eternity. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories of Islamic history.